So this review has been making the rounds as somewhat intimidating to all, quote, Amazon apologists. Now, I want to preface, I know Dan Murrell pretty well. I've seen a ton of his reviews. I've been a fan of his for years, and I do like him personally. I don't think even politically we have much issues, but I gotta say, and not just with this one, but recently we've diverged pretty sharply. It's interesting he's become very critical of the MCU, and I have too, but the things he hates the most, I think the only point of agreement we have is Loki. We both agreed Loki was pretty well done. I thought the ending was very disappointing. He also had some issues with Loki, but that's about it. We just agree on Loki. So that's where we are with Dan. And he's going to try to explain to us and get a lot of facts wrong. And then, of course, that's going to spoil his analysis because it doesn't seem to be clear he knows what he's talking about.
Gaps based on pieces of information and characters that they can use that haven't yet been directly adapted, which is why you probably see Elrond and Galadriel in this show, but there's not a whole lot about the First Age and anything from the Silmarillion, etc., because that's not what they have the rights to make here.
Well, it's true that they don't have the full rights to the Silmarillion, but they don't need the full rights. They have a consultant. They have a Tolkien family member with them as a consultant. So presumably, they just on a case by case basis go to the Tolkien estate and say, can we use this bit from the First Age? Can we use that bit from the First Age? I was actually pretty shocked how much we got of the First Age. I was like, oh, wow, we got quite a lot. We got the trees, we got Morgoth, we got a lot. So if you are a hardcore fan, you're going to be like very satisfied because, of course, you want more and you want it to be more complete and explicit. And to be fair to the other side, which apparently he's not aware of, with Finrod, because yes, Galadriel and him do have a relationship, and yes, in a way, Sauron killed Finrod, but it is slightly more complicated in terms of what directly killed Finrod. So in some cases, it's kind of skewed in a certain interpretation, which could be misleading, to be fair to the other side. But he doesn't raise that objection. His real objection is these aren't the Jackson films.
None of the characters say or do anything interesting, and the show really is so far about putting two or more people into some fantastic scenery and then just having them say some words because they have to. The dialogue in The Rings of Power is filler at best. Conversations go on twice as long as they should, going around in circles, and at times it legitimately feels, I'm not being funny here, like they're just trying to pad out the episode so that when Amazon looks at what they spent $700 million on, they see that each one of these episodes is an hour.
So it basically just comes to there's no Vigo. Well, that's a deal breaker for him. Okay, listen, I like Vigo. I recognize he's one of the greatest actors. And I also recognize that performance in the Lord of the Rings film trilogy was pretty well done. It was very compelling, all that. But the problem is, it wasn't Tolkien. He was doing a pretty good job, but he wasn't doing a good job as Aragorn. He was doing a good job as a Jackson action hero. In fact, that's literally what he is, Action Jackson, not Tolkien. And I know Vigo reads the books and he's very enthusiastic about all this stuff. And I'm sure from his perspective, it was accurate enough. Well, I'm sorry, I got to tell him, it ain't accurate really at all. There's almost nothing accurate in the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. It's a complete mess of canonical violations. But again, Dan Murrell saying, that gave me the magic of Middle Earth. Well, it gave you certain magic, I would grant maybe of Spielberg and George Lucas. And if you like that stuff, so be it. But that ain't J.R.R. Tolkien. There's almost nothing of Tolkien in those films. And we know this because Christopher Tolkien told us there's nothing of Tolkien in these films. And given throughout his entire life, he knew his father, I don't know what to tell you. Fans can like what they want. It's perfectly fine. Clearly, a lot of the audience has radically misread Tolkien. Some have radically misread him as a white nationalist Aryan neo-Nazi. And they think their neo-Nazism and stupidity and fascism is good. But it's not good because it's not what Tolkien wanted. And then we have the other half that want stupid McDonald action films like this guy. Well, I hate to break this to you. He wasn't doing stupid action movies when he wrote these books. You're looking for another author, maybe Stephen King. He's okay with making McDonald's thrillers. And he says that. He confesses that. He's not ashamed of that. That's not Tolkien. Tolkien wanted a very specific mythology. And if you actually knew what the hell you were talking about, you'd recognize a lot of the Easter eggs. You'd recognize the Peter Jackson Easter eggs. They do a lot of homage to the Peter Jackson film. I just don't think you know what the hell you're talking about. It seems You may have read the books and you saw the movies and you honestly think, you just think it's a roller coaster. It's not. The tone is appropriate. The slow pace is appropriate. We're finished. You clearly don't care about Tolkien. You want a stupid action adventure. Nonsense. I don't know. Orcs exploding all over the place, and Vigo waves his magic penis sword. Good for you. None of that has anything to do with Tolkien. I guess this is what the fandom wants. They're complaining about canonical violations, but their violations are of the Jackson films. But Jackson didn't write Lord of the Rings. Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, so we ain't going anywhere. You can find the stories dull, and you can even get into the canonical violations. What you don't want to say is, I don't know, guys, there's just too many characters, there's too many stories, it's just so boring. That's the mythology. They've cut out a huge amount of people, and you're still complaining. So it seems to me you don't really know Tolkien. On Spielberg films, I think he knows his stuff. On Spider Man, he kind of knows his stuff. When it comes to Tolkien and the adaptations in any real detail, I don't think he knows anything. He didn't even do good research for this. They don't need the full rights to the Silmarillion. They did give us a lot of the First Age, so you just aren't paying attention. You aren't even paying attention to the clues they set up for these stories. This is a pretty incompetent review, and that's all there is to it. Which is sad to say, because once upon a time, he was a much more thorough, careful critic.